This is a video I've been wanting to make for a long time at this point, but I've always put it off because I don't really like making personal videos anymore. One, I know why you're here. You want to hear me talk about politics, or YouTube drama, or current events, or whatever other topic blips into my mind that I want to talk about in a video. And two, I just like being more tight-lipped when it comes to my personal life these days. I'll talk about my personal life sometimes in live streams, because I know most of my audience doesn't watch those because I primarily make pre-recorded content. And sometimes I'll talk about hardships going on in my life in my Discord server, but not so much videos these days. But this is just something I've really wanted to get off my chest, and this channel has been a source of catharsis for me for a very long time at this point. Anyway, as you probably know by this point, I have autism, and up until 2 years ago, I didn't make the fact that I'm autistic public on this channel for years. And it's because I've always felt this sense of shame for having it. All throughout my high school years, autism was popular to use as a pejorative online, and the same thing applied amongst the students in my school. We would often jokingly call each other autistic as a substitute for stupid. Students with more noticeably severe forms of autism than I have are often the source of mockery and ridicule. And I would often partake in that because I wanted to differentiate myself from these other students who had autism, and also feel good about myself and think, well, I have autism, but at least I'm not like those students. And all the time on this channel, I would call other people autistic as a substitute for stupid, and this gross behavior all stemmed from self-hatred and projection. I've never liked being autistic because I've always felt like this outcast from most of society. A lot of things most neurotypical people have no problem doing, I can barely do. Like, for example, going grocery shopping. There's a store right by me called BJ's, and yes, BJ's is just a store. There's nothing else going on there, I don't think. Anyway, if you never heard of the store, that's because it's mostly an East Coast chain. And every time I am in this store, it is crowded with people, because this is not just a regular store, but a warehouse store. I start to feel anxiety, I start to sweat because I don't like being around crowds of people. My only coping mechanism for this is I am always wearing headphones and listening to music when I am shopping. Music has always been my escape whenever I am in situations where I am in sensory overload. In high school, whenever I was in the cafeteria, I would immediately put on headphones because I could not be able to handle all of those people talking at once. And also walking in the hallway in between classes, that shit I hated the most. All of those students in close proximity to each other, all headed to different places at once. It was always too overwhelming for me. I did usually put on my headphones, though sometimes I was yelled at by a teacher or a dean to take them off. But what I'm getting at here is these are seemingly simple things on paper, and are simple things that most people don't think twice about doing, but are things that I personally dread. And this is what I hate the most about being a neurodivergent person living in neurotypical society. My quirks, the way I go about life, and my dislikes are quote-unquote abnormal because they skew away from most of society. What I have to grit my teeth and bear are just normal things that most people don't think twice about. Like during the summer when we have landscapers coming to our yard. Even if it is a hot day and the AC is off, I shut the window because I just cannot stand the sound of lawnmowers. And then my mom is usually like, why do you have the window closed? It's so hot in your room. And I'm like, I just can't fucking stand the sound of the lawnmowers. I'll open it up again when the landscapers leave. And because of my autism, I often feel like the outcast that other people struggle to understand because they themselves don't have autism. And vice versa because they are neurotypical and I have autism. Like, someone could be telling a joke or is being sarcastic and I don't understand their sense of humor, while everyone else in the room are able to identify that person as not being serious, while I am taking them at face value, and then I feel like the biggest fucking idiot in the room when I find out they weren't actually being serious. And a couple of times this has happened to me while with a group of friends, and one friend would usually say to me, you do know that person was joking, right? And I'm like, oh yeah, I did know all along that they were joking, I was just playing along. And then I replay what that person was saying in my mind and the way they were saying it, and then I realized, it was so fucking obvious they were joking. How was I not able to pick up on that? And then internally I'm just screaming at myself and overcome with humiliation. I am also obsessed with routine. I gotta wake up around a certain time. I gotta eat breakfast around a certain time. When I play a video game, I think about what time I'm going to start playing the game and what time I'm going to finish playing the game. Same thing for whenever I binge a TV show. My days are meticulously planned and almost always follow the same pattern. For example, I started recording recording this video at 4:45 p.m. And that's usually around the time I start recording these videos. Sometimes I start a little earlier, sometimes I start a little later, but it is almost always around this same time because I don't know, it just feels right to me. I usually finish breakfast about an hour and a half before I start recording these videos because I stay up absurdly late and fall asleep during the morning. And then I wake up during the afternoon, have my breakfast, and give myself about an hour before I start recording these videos. Usually I think about what I'm going to say and maybe read some articles if I'm talking about something going on in current events or politics. But if anything comes up that throws a wrench into how my day is structured, that internally destroys me. In the words of Dutch Vanderland, I had a goddamn plan, though he certainly didn't say that line that monotone. Any break in routine, I feel, threatened by, and I know this is a very common trait with autism. We like routine because it brings us a sense of security and familiarity, and if for any reason that routine is swiped away, our security and familiarity is also swiped away. And I struggle to adapt, and it puts me in a noticeably shitty mood for the rest of the day because the way I planned this day out just got flipped upside down. And I really fucking hate this because I know deep down this really isn't that big of a deal. Just because your day goes ever so slightly different than how you planned it, that doesn't mean it's the end of the world, but it may as well fucking be to my brain. And honestly, the monotony really gets to me. I do the same things in the same order on most days. I want to break away from routine, but my brain is like, no, that's too scary and unfamiliar, stick with what you're comfortable with. And it's a struggle because no one in my personal life really understands it. No one I live with has autism. I have one friend in real life that has autism, but I haven't spoken to him in a while, unfortunately. So when I do sometimes talk about this with other people, they're usually like, well, what's the big deal? I have routine changes all the time. Things come up that I have to prioritize at that moment. Yeah, sure, maybe at most I'll think it's an inconvenience, but it doesn't destroy my day like it seemingly does with you. And that's ultimately what my disdain for my autism boils down to. People struggling to understand it. I have always so desperately wanted to not be neurodivergent because I feel so out of step with most other people. They don't have the same quirks I do, and if I explain it to them and they don't quite understand it, I feel like a huge fucking weirdo. And I have always wanted to be quote-unquote normal because the neurotypical world we live in has always been one I have never been able to fit in with. And it doesn't help that most people's perception of autism is either an astrophysicist who has a special interest in coins, or someone with such low-functioning autism that they can't function in regular day-to-day life. And since I am neither of those extremes, I don't fit the mold of an autistic person many neurotypical people have in their heads. So any struggles I have that come about from my autism can't be that bad. I have to toughen them out. No one has explicitly said this to me, but I have seen this sentiment quite a bit online. Obviously, it is fine if you can't relate to the plights of an autistic person, but if you can't be fucked to at the very least be empathetic, then don't even bother weighing in at all. So yeah, that's why I don't like being autistic. This would be the part of the video where I have some positive message to end the video off on, but I don't have any. This was purely my venting session. If you relate to this, cool. If you don't, whatever. If you don't care, then I don't know why you were watching 8 minutes of this. But I will say, I have seen my share of videos where people talk about their autism in pride, and of course I am happy for these people, but at the same time, I'm also very envious. I want to be at that point too, but I can't help but feel like an outcast weirdo who can't relate to most of the world. That's a sad enough note to end this video off with. Anyway, that's all I have to say. Bye-bye.